of the 38 investments, and I'm sure there are a lot of the ones that I like, and I'm sure a lot of people like some of the other ones. I've picked a few over here, and we've talked a little bit about Postman already. And again, congratulations, super duper. It looks like a super duper hit, and like you said, it's a long way to go.
Long way to go. I think all the credit goes to the team. I'm just a facilitator in the process. That's the way of it.
You're super humble, but your reality is there's some guidance that you give, and there's obviously capital that also helps. So in this segment, I just, we have about 5 companies that I've picked out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you just like either some anecdotes about them, like what's your favorite part about the investments, and at the stage of the company they invested in, so just the audience get a sense of how these investments happen. Maybe gives a general idea of how these investments kind of take place. First one is Hasura. I don't think a lot of people have heard of Hasura, but it's an interesting company itself. We'd love to hear from you on that.
So yeah, Hasura is a pretty interesting. I would say it's following the steps of Postman. Very, very interesting company. Very high potential. It's a very, very low key company. Very few people know about it because it's like, what the hell is this? Yeah. It's a pretty interesting story. I got introduced to Hasura through Abhinav at Postman told me about them, right? And so he did say that I met this guy. He's a very smart guy. I liked him. And when I first spoke to Tanmay, who was the founder of Hasura, Tanmay and Rajoshi, they were doing a services company, and they had Hasura as a side project. And they were building something very different. And they were building a PaaS platform as a service and a backend as a service on a new age Kubernetes kind of a platform. And they had some way to connect both of them in a very interesting way. But they were doing something very different. And they were running a services company, 24 cross systems, and doing this as a side project. So it was when I spoke to them, I said, Tanmay and Rajesh, I really like talking with you. And I realized, talking to them, there was somebody very, very, very smart people on the other end of the phone, and they were in Chennai at that point of time. And I said that, I like you. There's definitely something here that you're thinking about, and you seem like very, very smart people. I just told them that, hey, I have two broad conditions if you're keen to take next steps. One is obviously you have to shut down your services company, because I don't think you can run a services company and do this. And the other thing was, that would you be able to get out from the comfort zone of Chennai and, make a transition, come to Bangalore, rethink how you're going to build this out. And because I realized that it will require a lot of work and we'll need to work very closely together. And so I just left that with him. He said, yeah, okay, let me think about it. And, he called me up 3-4 weeks later and, he said, hey, I've shut down my services company and I've made a decision that we want to move lock, stock and barrel, because now that I don't have a services company and I can refocus and really put together a team just around this project and the depth of talent for that, not because Bangalore, he didn't do that. He just felt that Bangalore would have more depth of talent around that, which is what my thing with him was also on that particular space that he was going after and what it is going after today. The depth of talent in Bangalore is probably far none in India. So, that's how it happened. He showed commitment. And then I said, okay, you showed commitment, you've done the first step. So, why don't you come in and chat? So we met again. I just was blown away meeting him in person about his technical prowess and depth and Rajoshi's understanding of community and open source. It just blew me away, right? I mean, that these guys are something, right? The business didn't make sense. Honestly, when I invested into the company, the business did not make sense. But I knew that there is something in these people. These founders, there was something. And then Vamshi, who's the CTO, and then I met with Anand, who's the CPO. There's something about these people, the way they're trying to attack me. So we partnered with them. I wrote them the first $1.2 million check. We started working closely together. I would show up at their office, ask idiotic questions, and that itself was a threat enough for them to kind of get their story in line. It wasn't because I was very smart or anything, but they are like every bit of the credit goes to them in terms of figuring things out. But my job was just asking questions and showing up at their office every 15 days and to talk about things. And then realizing that, the business probably what they're working on was not going to make too much sense. But, they had the capability to reorient that business towards, let's say, taking a tailwind of GraphQL, and they reoriented what they were building with GraphQL as a tailwind. And that change happened 6 to 7 months into after our funding them. And from there on, this was late 18 or early 19, we launched the product. In 2019, Hasura has been one of the fastest growing open source projects in the world.
Oh, wow.
Right? We have gone from 1 million Docker pulls to about 50 million Docker pulls in 1 year. We have
15 million.
Our community has grown 50 million.
5015.
50.
Wow.
So they have grown like crazy, and of course, it was the judgment on the people and the team and how they were evolving. So all the credit goes to them. I would not take even a single iota of the credit here. All the credit goes to them because the recognition of the people was right. I think 2019 onwards, they really started taking the product out, really started thinking about how GraphQL could be there, how could they get bottoms up adoption with developers. They're close to about now 18,000 odd GitHub stars. It's phenomenal what they've been able to achieve. For a company which is sitting out of India, today they have a pipeline of about 2,000 odd customers on their cloud version, which they launched last week. They have about 30 of the Fortune 500 customers which are in different stages of production, being production customers. They have about 50 odd customers now which are over 2,000 employees, companies talking to them and working with them in different phases. So they have become synonymous now with how the universal data access there. So we moved from GraphQL, now we are moving towards the whole positioning around universal data access. And how could this be the new age sort of MuleSoft of thing? Or a new age WebLogic is more the right proxy. How could we be that company? And I think so. We've made that transition over the last eight years. You will see some announcements. We've been fortunate to we had a lot of inbound earlier this year during the recession. The company sitting in India has raised from one of the best investors in the valley, a top tier investment firm, to be announced in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Really, really good people who've seen this journey before as well. All done remotely. All kudos to the team. They never met the team. Sitting out of India, raising nearly a $30 million round, Series B round, completely remotely. It's phenomenal. So I think the bet is on the team and what they're able to do. And the best part is, again, there's no proxy. There's nothing similar to this. It's a purely original company. It's a purely open source company. It's a product-led growth play, just like our friends at Postman. Obviously, Postman was more workflow. This is more infrastructure and more data in data path. Slightly different place, but something very proud for our ecosystem. So I look at it again, saying that my job is trying to see how we can put India on the map for some of these companies. So that's what gives me satisfaction. Because I know it's a long answer, but I'm very passionate about what these guys are doing. And
I've been wanting to have Rajoshi or that the other co-founder Tanmay on the show.
Tanmay,
I'd love to have him on the show. So I'm gonna try.
They're phenomenal. They're phenomenal.
Try my best to get them on the show. The other one,
unfortunately, founders become popular once they raise large rounds, right? Yeah. That's how unfortunate it is. They do a lot of work, and then the funding announcements get them. They will get popular in the next 1 month, and you should have them on your show. Until then, they'll be like, "Oh, what is this Hasura stuff? GraphQL, building Postgres, what is all this shit?"
So I mean, to be honest, I've been trying to get them on the show, so I'm going to find a way to make that happen.
I'm happy to introduce you to them.
Well, I think the listeners would be most happy to hear about this. We've talked a little bit about Postman already, but is there anything else that you'd like to share of that investment that we may not have covered?
No, I think world-class product, category-creating product. I personally feel the best is yet to come. There's a lot of headroom for us to grow from here, and I think goal is we're at about 11.5 million developers. The goal is to get to 100 million developers and associated profiles from there. So I think this can be a phenomenal company, like GitHub and even beyond, I would say.
So, just like most other developer tools, is it also like freemium where
Yeah, absolutely. It's a premium product, which is what product-led growth in some ways has helped, right? Because people can just use it for their simple testing and things like that.
Right.
And when they want to collaborate around what they want to do, then it moves from developers to their own small teams. And when multiple teams are using it, then it moves towards an enterprise license. So it's a individual developer to teams to enterprise play. Purely grounds up. So we have 500,000 enterprises globally now using their product, and that's all happening organically. So more than 500,000.
When
I think the only word I would add to say, and I tell it to these guys also, is the best is yet to come there.
Okay, we're gonna keep a lookout, and we're gonna have you back on the show and talk about it. The two other interesting investments of yours that I really like, and now we're getting to the beer and food category. Bira91 and Licious. I'd love to hear your stories about that. I think both brands have such a lot of user love as well in the market. The way they started, the way they've kind of figured things out. How did those happen?
Both are investments that we would not do at Nexus, unfortunately, or at that point of time.
So this was your personal check?
These are personal checks. So they're not Nexus investments, they're personal checks. But there's a story behind this, right? So on Bira, Ankur was me in college, right? We went to the same college.
Oh, really?
So
wow.
Yeah. So we both did it at Illinois Tech, and
So you were part of the friends and family round.
That's
FF
right.
and F.
That's right.
FF and F.
That's right. Really, the first check in, because when he started out, and I always knew him as a very smart, very astute guy. Even in college, very smart guy. Could connect with a bunch of people, right from getting work done at the grassroots level to really, being able to. I like that in entrepreneurs, right? If they can map out, things, especially in businesses which are completely like offline and things like that. You need to be able to have that ability to kind of do things. And he was always a very, very street smart person, and had a good sense of aesthetic and design. So obviously, when he wanted to start something, he didn't have he had a concept that he wanted to do this. He was doing a distribution business. He was doing an alcohol distribution business, Serrana beverages, and then wanted to move into doing this, right? So that's what I'm saying. It was a bet on the person and what he wanted to do, and knowing the characteristics of that person, that this person has the insights on the market around what needs to be done, and a very fundamental insight, right? That you don't want to drink your dad's beer. We're all youngsters. We don't want to be drinking our dad's beer and saying that, okay, we're all Kingfisher kind of things. Every generation or every 20, 30 years, there's a way to create a new brand. And can that be created? And how does that appeal to the millennial, and what needs to happen, and what is the product innovation which is happening, right? And sometimes to win, you also need to have a competitor who's very determined to lose, right? So it makes your job at winning much easier. Kingfisher at that point of time with Vijay Mallya was, hitting self-defeating goals, right? With their brand value, their airline going out of business, and so much bad publicity, So, they were hitting their own self goals and not innovating on product. And of course, you had a corporate which was not able to get new products into market. So there was a bit of dissonance there, and they were not able to tie in stuff with the new flavors and bringing in wheat beer, bringing in new things. So I really like the vision of what these guys wanted to do. And of course, there have been many missteps along the way, at least from my sense. From a distance, I feel the company could be even bigger than what it is today. Because of supply issues, and we underestimated the back-end challenges and all of that stuff. But what he's been able to create is pretty phenomenal in terms of a brand thing, creating that customer pull, customer love around the product. That has been pretty phenomenal if you look at it, right? So again, this goes back to the thing that I cannot have a thesis, but I can have a fundamental insight that yes, I can identify with the fact as a consumer that you need to have a different beer, and the choices are pretty poor. And the premium segment, your import costs and things is very large. So between a Kingfisher and the next one, there's a gap, there's a staring wide big gap. And nobody's catering to that gap. And if you position something, people are willing to pay a delta to do it. And there's a large enough market to create a sustainable company. And of course, business, there are all these things that, the business has its challenges. Distribution is pretty messy and all that stuff. But I said, this is where I'll put my money because I know the guy and I think that he can do it. And I think he has that sense of aesthetics and around positioning things and doing things.
That's a vote in itself.
That went, yeah, in some ways it went right, I would say, right? It's a company worth whatever, 2,100 crores today invested. It was a pittance. So it's done decently well. I think I personally feel that company could have been even bigger if we didn't have our supply challenges, we didn't underestimate some of those things. But I would give Ankur a lot of credit for starting this revolution of new age brands. A lot of people have come with it. The challenge is that none of those other brands have hit scale requests yet. And so everybody looks like, oh, this is an easy business to get into. You can sell a couple of cases and it'll be okay. The challenges happen when you need to scale to, like, let's say 5% or 10% of the market. Today that's their market share is like 5, 6, 7, 8% of the premium layer, right? But when you have to scale this business, the challenge is not doing it when you're like selling 10,000 or 20,000 bottles. It's when you're selling like hundreds and thousands of cases. The challenges on scale, challenges of all of that are tremendous, right? And I think, Kingfisher was built in licensed life. It was generational business. We didn't see it evolve, right? Here's a company which started in 2015 and in 4 years, which has created a name for itself. Let's give the guy some credit and let's give the guy a lot of leeway that, this is something which has been created from you. Of course, he could have done it a little bit better, but I think he's a very capable guy and known very well. He'll navigate this thing through to something.
I think they're also just getting
but I feel good. I feel good because, as I said, there was no business plan. There was no product. There was a pamphlet. This is how it looked. These are look and feel. This is what the logo is. And, hey, I'm thinking of doing beer. And I'm like, okay, Ankur, I know you. You're a smart guy. You figure things out. And why do you say that? And, I heard him out. And, I remember, going to his office for the first tasting part. And, I tasted and I said, man, you got a winner on your hand. I had the Bira White. And, I said, you got something great on your hands, right? And I think, I think, so that's what it is.
It's amazing. We have actually talked about Bira White on this show 3 times already. Not with Ankur, right? And Jiten, my ex-boss, also invested in Bira91 way later. But, I'm going to definitely get Ankur on the show also at some point.
He's a very interesting guy. Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's was the reason. I mean, it's a very tangential thing, but goes to the point that there's no thesis I had going in. There's no thesis I had going in on Postman. Yes, there's a value migration play. So it is about identifying the industry trend that soap will move to rest. In Hasura, it was a paper bet. There's no thesis. In Bira, I mean, everything is stacked against them to get into that space.
How did Licious happen? Was that also someone you went to school with?
I don't drink anymore. I quit alcohol about 15 months back, so I feel bad about that. But I'm a vegetarian, so you can imagine. Now tell me, how do I write a check to Licious?
So you know for sure that this was an unbiased investment.
Yeah, exactly. This from sure that I'm a capitalist at heart. Basically, that's what it shows, right? So I'm a vegetarian. I believe. So I'm pretty much, I think, the only vegetarian on the cap table, and they're like, you are normally. So I'll tell you my experience with them. So I met with them. I obviously felt that there's a big opportunity at a macro level, that there's an opportunity from taking unstructured things in this country towards structured goods. I think there's a very macro trend, and there's a macro tailwind for that to happen. And if you think about it, right, meat is something that you put in your mouth. It's something. It's flesh that you eat, right? And you come to think about it, the entire experience was so bad, right? I don't know how it was done, and I could not taste the product in this case, right? So again, the bet was talking to the founders, right? I mean, I remember spending time with the founders and I wrote the first check, and this was with Quandl and Mr. Mohandas Pai. So there were, I think, 4 or 5 people who wrote the check at that point of time to the company. And all that the founders had to show was, I remember him meeting at a Starbucks, and the founder got a way like, these are the boxes in which we'll put the meat. I was like, okay, the boxes looked really, really nice. The design was really, really nice. But it was just meeting the founders, right? I mean, you had you had Vivek and you had Abhay, and you saw these guys. One was absolutely passionate, crazy about the space. Both were passionate, crazy about the space, but one was really a left-brain guy. One was a right-brain guy, right? I mean, it was a perfect combination of saying that they both could keep each other in check in some ways, and it was a very, very good complementing team. And the passion that I saw in Abhay when I made that investment was different. And I was like talking to him about very different things. Right? I remember, how would you cut the carcass, and how do you get best amount of utilization of cutting things from the carcass? That was one of my stupid questions. I just wanted to check how much attention to detail he had. And he looked up into the ceiling, and he took out his hand in a particular way, and he said, I have these laser cutting machines. They cut it particularly this way, and this is the amount of this is where the flesh in the carcass is, and this is where it flows off. And these machines can do this thing, and I can get a yield which a butcher cannot get because he cannot cut that finely. And then this thing. So the way he put his hand up and the way he rolled his eyes, and I said, okay, this is the guy I'm going to invest into. I just decided then. There's no thesis. The broad thesis was, yes, there's going to be a move towards people wanting to do this and do this. The way they were thinking about it, and the way in which they were thinking about the cost structure in the business of having a hub one hub in the city, many small distribution centers which were not on high street, how they would build the cold chain around it, how would they do the back-end sourcing, how would they do the ISO certification, how would they build a brand, how would they position Licious as a brand. As a great meal begins here, which is a positioning towards inputs, and how they would be so true to the fact that they would want to own the customer relationship they want to own the relationship with the customer and not give this out to a delivery firm and lose that connect with the last mile. Because the business is a 60% plus gross margin business, they can afford it. So they want to keep that connect with the thing. And how do they do it in 2 hours? Right? How do you think about your meal after that you want to have it after 2 hours and still be ready to do it? How they were thinking about it. The thought process and the passion was just so amazing. I think that's what it was. A people bet again at that point of time. Put my very little hard-earned money. I'm not a very rich guy, but I put my hard-earned money there. And in terms of multiples, probably will be one of the most. It is probably the most phenomenal multiple X that I have.
So this is also a personal check.
This is also a personal check. Yeah. Wow. We unfortunately could not do stuff which harmed animals, as per our agreements.
Yeah. So what's with this? So I'm guessing beer was because it's a vice, and it's probably also not part of the
It's a vice, yeah, exactly. So we don't do that, and we do not do anything which harmed animals and harmed anything. Right? So we could not do these investments, unfortunately.
So there is an opportunity in India to create a vice fund.
Absolutely, that's what I look at it, right? I mean, it's a pretty crazy thing, but which is the best performing stock in the world that you think, in the history of the world?
I'm going to say it's oil. I'm going to say it's oil or beer or as a consolation or one of those companies.
It is Philip Morris.
Of course. All right.
That is the most phenomenal stock run that you can imagine. It's the most addictive stock run. I'm not propagating this. I'm a shareholder in ITC. I bought shares there, and of course there's oil and all that stuff. But I'm just going to tell you, just saying that history repeats itself at every point. ITC is one of the best performing stocks in the country. Of course, capital allocation and all of that stuff is I have question marks around how they would do that. And of course, this industry will have things. But if you look at it, the best performing stock in the history of the world is one of the, I think all the way up to 2008 or 9 was Philip Morris. So, just tells you that, vice spaces, I would say gambling and stocks. Even I look at Dream11 in some ways, and I say that it's a phenomenal company, right? I mean, it is in that.
There's money gaming. Yeah.
You can call it game of skill and luck. I mean, we all know what it is. That's what it is. There are all technical definitions, but I think those businesses are there, and of course Delta Corp is there in terms of gambling, and the stock is doing well and all that stuff. So I think if you look at patterns, history repeats itself in terms of investment patterns. There are global patterns, and there are Indian companies, and you'll find some of those. So I invest into public stocks and of course a lot of private companies. But the patterns repeat itself. Mankind is repeating itself. That's what they say, right? History doesn't repeat itself; it rhymes. So so that's, you got to listen to the rhymes. If you can understand that, there are patterns which emerge out of all these things.
So for Licious, there was actually a delta, right? In the sense, the existing experience of buying meat versus the experience you would get buying via Licious. If you guys did a mental model and mapped it, was that delta greater than 5 or 6 for an existing kind of experience?
I would say so, right? Because see, there were the choices was going to a meat market and getting it, which obviously, nobody really appealed or liked it. At least I know that my Bengali friends love going to a fish market and having it. I can't put up with it. I'm anyway vegetarian, so I can't put up with it any which way. But I don't like the idea of seeing that. But if you look at any other thing, if going to a normal shop and buying it, obviously it's a very, very sick thing, experience to look at it, right? And the choice is in between eating fresh and frozen, right? If you look at it, for the customer, the target segment, it's between fresh and frozen, and the quality is so apparent. If you have something from Licious, it is fresh, and then your food will be better, and it'll be. So you are actually naturally getting in people who, you would build a fresh supply chain of meat. Would be a very different supply chain from a frozen supply chain, which is export oriented or which is frozen. And people can tell the difference. I think the question is, I chose to say that there is an opportunity to build an entire supply chain, a vertical brand, from sourcing from farm to fork. If you can build that and own the entire piece, and as a result, do the QA. And because, in this, people are also realizing a lot of antibiotics, ammonia, a lot of sodium, all of those antibodies are stuffed into these chickens. If you can keep that thing going, if you do an end-to-end supply chain around that, then a much more phenomenal opportunity can be created, and the product is better. If the product is good, the value proposition is good, and the convenience is also thrown into it, right? And there's safety around it. Then it's a far better experience than I would decouple my buying and sending my driver to send something and get it, and I don't know how much weight of, is it 1 kg, is it 600 grams, is it 400 grams, when it says 500 grams, you don't know what that person gives you at that particular point of time. Is it the right kind of thing? Is it a proper leg? Is it much more than that? I mean, just putting yourself in that shoe as a customer and then being able to decipher that, can a corporate do this and do it well? I think that's what got me there. It's just about see, any entrepreneur that you talk to, it's about attention to detail. If I'd be asking the most crazy questions, not because I know the thing, but I'm just trying to judge whether the person can get to the nuances of connecting every dot and saying, okay, I can ship meat for 40 minutes in traffic at 4 degrees and just still not get purified. It will have this kind of pH content. I mean, that shows that person is thinking about the Indian nuances, and he can do 2 milk runs with 1 delivery, or 4 milk runs with 1 delivery, or 7 milk runs with ice packaging, and hence, the trip will make sense and the economics will make sense, and there'll be no loss to quality. So, if you really, we're judging people at the beginning. I just brought those skill sets to looking at this. It's worked out, but I would say again, all the credit to the team. I mean, they're phenomenal. Obviously, I'm biased.
The last one that I want to pick your brain on is MyUpchar.
Right.
It's a contrarian bet. At the time, I think the investment was made. A lot of people were not talking about vernacular. That was not in the vernacular. What was that investment like?
So that's an interesting one, right? So we as a fund have had some insights about this space, because on the vernacular space, we are lead investors in a company called Pratilipi, which is the largest vernacular literature platform, long form literature platform in the country, right? So we obviously have insights into the learnings from there that there is a need, that there's a large part of the country which doesn't get access to health information, and it's not structured in a particular way, right? And obviously, if you look at it, within India there are many countries, right? I mean, I'm sure you have seen these maps. So Bangalore is equal to Australia, or all those kind of things, right?
Wait, Pratilipi was prior to MyUpchar?
Pratilipi was prior to MyUpchar. So we knew that the reading patterns in vernacular were pretty deep, right? And we knew that if you just look at the Hindi belt of the country, which is the north, very bad access to health information, very poor health infrastructure, and very it's a complete mess, right? So is there an opportunity to build from ground up a WebMD equivalent, which is which can be focused on this? And so when we started talking to them, they had raised some angel money, but we were the first. Umidyar and us and Shunbhai were the first set of investors in the company, with us and Umidyar leading the round. And the thought process there was that there's an opportunity to structure this. There are a lot of queries, there's a lot of search requests, and the information is very broken. So can you, from the ground up, create very, very well-structured content? And how do you integrate, people ordering medicines? How do you integrate getting teleconsults and all of that with a new age mobile-first environment, right? And in categories where which have very, 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 very poor coverage, like gynac cases, or female fertility cases, or men fertility cases, or sexual health cases, or things around diabetes and chronic conditions. So how could we create very deep content pools and drive through people to do it? So today, and we invested in the company about 2 years back. The company is clearly evolved. We are the largest teleconsult platform in the country today, and of course we are the second largest healthcare services company in the country after Practo. Practo, of course, has been around for a longer time. They've advertised and done a lot of things, but this is a company which under $3 million has got here, right? Just to tell you, because they focused on the need of the customer. And here we had two people who were both Stanford educated, and were ready to get onto a bus and go to Lucknow and talk to their customers. So there's a very rare kind of a combination of team which had deep insights and passion and wanted to solve this problem grounds up. And that's what got us to kind of get convinced to write this. And of course, the team has executed quite well. I think 2 months back they were, as I said, the second largest, and I think we are trending towards being the largest healthcare destination platform. Things. We still have to fix a couple of things on retention and things like that, which we're working on, and the team is working very well on and showing very good trends on. But we launched teleconsult about a year and a half back, and now the largest on that.
Manoj was on the show very early, actually. I think it was episode 4 or 5, and he gave us a lowdown. So if the audience had listened to that one, which I'll probably give a link to, down here, they're probably going to go and be able to see that episode. Hey Sameer, this has been amazing. Thank you for taking us through your investments.
Very
Hey, I think a lot of people would gain from at least understanding how the thought process works, why somebody would invest. I think it's important for people to understand, why some of these investments happen. From the outside, it seems like, it's so simple or etc. But once you get into the details, there's a lot more that's happening there, right?
It's simple but not easy.
Absolutely.
But if people understand that nuance, that it's simple but it's not easy, then I think everything is okay.
That's the beauty of good ideas as well, is that it is simple.
Yeah.
Right?
It's simple but it's not easy to implement.
So I just wanted to Sameer, so if somebody had to get in touch with you, Sameer at NexusVP, or should they